only about 13% of businesses in the US are able to have a profitable exit, meaning that
Crazy.
87% of companies go out of business.
All right, welcome back to the Pursuit of Profit podcast. On today's episode, we're diving into one of the most urgent and overlooked business trends of our time, the seller tsunami. Over the next 15 years, nearly 12 million baby boomer owned businesses will sell, close, or transfer ownership. That represents over $15 trillion in business value. But here's the reality: only 20% of those businesses will actually sell. 80% will close their doors and never find a buyer. So, joining us today is someone who's made it her mission to change that outcome. Jessica Fialkovich is the founder and CEO of The Exit Factory, a groundbreaking firm that helps business owners under 25 million increase their profitability, boost valuations, and orchestrate a successful exit. Before launching The Exit Factory, Jessica built the most successful and fastest growing business brokerage practice in the United States. She's also the author of Getting the Most for Selling Your Business, a must read for any entrepreneur thinking about their exit strategy. If you're a business owner and haven't started planning your exit or even thought about it, this episode could be the most important conversation you hear all year. Let's get into it. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode. So welcome. And I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely, Jessica. You have an incredible background. I mean, you have founded several different companies. You've experienced multiple successful exits, which is, I put emphasis on that, right?
Yeah.
One of your well-known companies that I have a lot of experience with is Transworld Business Advisors. So I think just to kind of, for the audience, how did you get, what is your journey, right? How did you
Mm.
get to the Exit Factor, this franchise that we're going to dig deeper on this afternoon?
Yeah, it's interesting because my journey is not like you hear the entrepreneur that like grew up selling like lemonade and stuff like that. And that's not my journey at all. Um, Actually, if you don't count my parents, I would be like a sixth generation entrepreneur.
Wow.
My great great grandparents were bootleggers. I think my great grandparents owned bars, and then my grandfather owned a chain of pharmacies. So I always joke it's like booze and drugs in our family line, right?
Right.
um, but so my dad is an education and my mom's a nurse. And the reason they took that departure is because my grandfather built up this chain of pharmacies and then he never built it for exit. So if you go back to like the 80s and 90s, I grew up in the Northeast, like CVS and Eckert started taking over the whole
Hmm.
pharmacy scene at that time. And he didn't foresee that. And so he got nothing out of his exit. It was like pennies on the dollar. And instead of our family being set up financially for future generations, it was kind of the opposite. And my dad had to take care of his parents, right? So that dampened his view of, I wouldn't say capitalism, but entrepreneurship, right? So he was always pushing me and my two sisters, like, go get a safe job, work for a big
Hmm.
corporate company. And that's exactly what I did. I started in sports and I moved into real estate in 2007. And I started working for a large real estate developer based out of New York in 2007 that was funded by Lehman Brothers. So
Okay.
we kind of know how that story ends for anyone that was around in 2008. So
Yeah.
September of 2008, half of our funding went away. And that was like this realization for me that I had been taught my entire life that if you work for a big, well funded company, your future is safe. Right. And that was a total reframe for me of saying that it actually wasn't safe because I didn't make the investment decisions like the Lehman Brothers people did. Right. I didn't make the decisions to go into business with Lehman Brothers. That was our executive team. And then there was just some, for lack of a better term, dude in a big office in Manhattan in
Hmm.
September of '08 with a spreadsheet, just going down a list and just saying cut, 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 cut to get us to the bottom line we needed to. And I had
Right.
no control over that. So that was when I decided to jump into entrepreneurship and start my first company. But that's kind of like the background of what got me to become a business owner, I'd say.
Got it. You did get involved in booze, though. Booze, I say. Well,
Yeah.
you used the term, right? So,
Yeah.
what was your first venture? Because I know you were involved in decanted wines.
Yeah. So I started, my husband and I had a really good friend. We were living in Aspen, Colorado at the time, and he owned a very well known boutique wine store. They're actually the wine store that started Aspen Food and Wine. And
Okay.
so it was right around the time we were like losing our jobs and we're like, wow, I mean, he gets to like JC gets to hang around and like drink good wine and chat with people all day. That sounds like a really cool way to make money. So we were fortunate and he helped us build that model and we moved to Southwest Florida and Naples and started that business up there. But what was interesting for us is we thought we were going to go into this business of like approachable wines, like
Mhm.
$10 Chardonnays or whatever. But wine is very highly allocated, almost like art is. So when you get into luxury wine, like you have to interview with these winemakers, and it's like really hard to get in to break into these luxury wines.
Mm.
But at that time, you always hear that recessions and depressions cause great opportunity, right? At that time, all the competitors weren't taking any of their luxury allocations because they didn't have any money. And that's where you make all the profitability. So we got
Okay.
pulled into this luxury space and we had a retail store, but we started working with collectors that were collecting bottles of wine. Like $500 to $25,000 is the most expensive bottle of wine
Wow.
we've ever sold. So before that business, I think the most expensive bottle I had was like a $25 bottle of Burgundy. And then,
Right.
fast forward 2, 3 years later, and we're selling this luxury wine out of our store, but also across North America into Canada and even into Hong Kong too.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
wild.
yeah.
Was that your first exit or
That
no?
was my first exit,
It
yeah.
was.
So, that was the we were in that business for about 4 years. It was retail hours and, working with, suppliers and customers on 3 different continents between Europe, North America, and Asia. So, we hit burnout pretty quickly, with that business. And we were also looking at kind of the writing on the wall. Everybody knows, like, Gary Vee's journey, right? But that was, like, when Gary Vee and the wine library were coming up, and we did a lot of our marketing, and sales through the internet, and things were
Mhm.
changing regulation wise. So we thought that was the best time for us to exit, both personally and for the business. So in
Okay.
2012, we sold that company.
Was it actually brick and mortar like a or no, you were
Yeah,
working in
it
an
was. It
industrial
was.
warehouse and
No,
shipping?
we had a small brick and mortar.
You did?
Naples, Florida actually is really it's one of the top wine collectors communities in the country. You've got like a lot of wealth down there, a lot of retired wealth, and a lot of heavy wine drinkers. So we had a small retail storefront space, and then we had a larger warehouse that was offsite too.
What year was this?
2009 through 2012 was when we owned the company.
Okay, so right after Lehman, Bear Stearns, and all that. So right after
Yep.
'08, you're
Yep.
into '09 and
Yep.
off and running. That's interesting. Are you a sommelier or did you get all into
I
that?
my husband is a sommelier. There's another path. There's a path called Master of Wine, and Masters of Wine study basically like how the wine is grown, how they call it the terroir, like affects the grapes and all that kind of stuff. And
Right.
then they also study the business of wine, right? And so I've got one level below Master of Wine. There's about the same number of Masters of Wine as there are Master Psalms. So there's about like
Okay.
300, 400 in the world. I'm
Okay.
one step below that. So
Very cool. So
yeah.
then how did you get involved in trans world? This is the biggest name that I'm aware of that you've been involved in. I mean, this is a very big deal.
So when we sold to Canid, we sold through a business brokerage and an M&A firm that's a competitor to Transworld. I won't name them because it's not a good story, right?
Mm,
But when we went through the transaction, um, the business broker wasn't the best, right? I do at this point, like in my career, I do know he did a great job. He found us multiple buyers within 30 days. We found, a good buyer, but he kind of just left the buyer on our doorstep and we figured out the rest from there.
right.
We did due diligence on our own. We did all the negotiation on our own. The only time I saw him after that was at the closing table. He showed up to collect his 6-figure commission check and he tried to
Nice.
sell us life insurance at the
Hmm,
closing table. So I had a mentor in the wine business and he said, "Jess, if you can ever find a business where you can be just like 1% better than your competition and blow them out of the water, like you need to go full force into that industry." Right.
mhm.
And so I was like, look, I know we can be 1% better than this. And we had the family background of I told my grandfather's story of like him not being able to exit. And, my husband has a similar family background. And so we were actually, on the East Coast, it used to be the Ritz, it's now the O, right, in Palm Beach. And we were just doing a bunch of research and, found that Transworld, because Transworld was really big at the time on the Southeast Coast, right? And so we got connected to the Transworld team. We got connected to Andy, Andy's actually from a similar small town from us in central New Jersey, where we
Okay.
grew up. And so there was an alignment of, basically like our backgrounds, but also culturally where we thought the business wanted to go. And we wanted to be in Denver, Colorado at that time. And they had an office up for resale, needed to put new owners in that would really steward that market well. So we launched that company in February of 2013,
Okay.
the Transworld office, the first one.
That's great. Did UFG
Yeah.
buy them or are you still involved?
It was a joint venture between
Okay.
United Franchise Group and Andy Cagnetta and his partners in Florida. And then I own, my husband and I own the rights to, should know this, but it's north of 50 different franchise units for Transworld Business
Good for
Advisors.
you. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
great. Quite an
Yep.
accomplishment. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I commend you for what you've done, your background. Obviously, I have an affinity to entrepreneurs and people who build and people who exit and people who create wealth. I love that. And that's what
Yes.
our listeners are achieving or want to achieve, and they want to be inspired by people that, I mean, I'm an ordinary, just regular person. If I can do it, anyone can do it, right? Some people
Right.
have a head start. Some people have different backgrounds and skill sets. But I think that's the beauty of franchising. It's like you don't have to be a genius. You don't need to be a visionary. You just need to be able to follow a system, right?
Yep.
Dig in deep, be disciplined, go out and fight like hell to win. If you have
Yeah.
that fire in you, you can do anything you want. But you don't have to
Exactly.
invent anything, right? I mean, like you
Yep.
said, did I invent business brokering? No. Did
No.
I did I create a business model that was incrementally 1 degree better than the competition? Yeah. And with that,
Yeah.
1 degree of change over the course of, I could take 10%, 15, 20% market share. I
Yep.
From memory, I think your Trans World is an award-winning top M&A brand across the country, if not the globe, right?
Yeah, we've been so our group of Transworlds has been the number one franchise location in the world. I think for we're 9 years running now. So
Wow. That's
yeah,
great. You've heard from some incredible franchise brands right here on the podcast. If you're sitting there wondering which opportunity might be the right fit for you, we're here to help. At Phrenosity, we offer free consulting services to aspiring small business owners just like you. We'll guide you through a focused, strategic process to help you identify the best franchise match. Call or text us at 561 277 3710 or visit us on the web at phrenosity.com. That's FRANOCITY.com. We look forward to working with you.
yeah.
So now, when does the exit fact, when does that kick in?
Yep. So 2018, we had built and grown our Transworld locations to probably about a team of about 30 people, and owned the entire state of Colorado. And,
Nice.
I love that UFG and Andy tolerated me for so long because I am visionary. So I'm not the ideal franchisee. Right. And so
Hmm.
I was always playing around with different stuff. And I said, the problem I see with the business brokerage and M&A market is that not everyone wants to sell when we're talking to them, right? Some people aren't ready to, some people want to transition the company to their family members, their employees. And so what if we could do some work with them ahead of time to ensure they do sell? Because like you said, only about 13% of businesses in the US are able to have a profitable exit, meaning that
Crazy.
87% of companies go out of business,
That
right?
is just insane on its face, that
It's
statement.
crazy.
Like, it really is.
And if you think about it, and this is like kind of my soapbox, right? But it's not just about us as owners. Like, yes, if we go out of business, we personally lose some wealth, right? But how does that affect our families? Going back to my beginning story
Hmm.
with my grandfather, but like your employees that lose their jobs, their families, the customers that aren't able to do business with you anymore. Some of the research shows you that when a local company goes out of business, most customers take their business to a large national conglomerate, which
Hmm.
then moves the economic impact out of the local community to, some big company, right? So if a
Yeah.
small retail store goes out on Main Street, most people just start buying from Amazon, right? And
Yeah,
so if you think
look at
about
Walmart did. Walmart did
yeah,
it. They
yeah,
actually intentionally went to small towns to do
yep,
what you just said. I'm going to disrupt, destroy small, and it'll bubble up to me big. And here we are, one of the richest people in the world, the Walton family.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
that was really my inspiration. So we started originally, the company was called Prep to Sell back in 2018. And the goal was to increase the profitability and efficiency for companies so they could sell. But what we did find when working with clients is that research and the clients telling us, hey, what if I don't want to sell? What if I want to give it to my kids? What if I want to sell it to my employees? What if I just want to hire a CEO and step back and be like an
Hmm.
investor?
They're all
So
exits.
they're all
They're all
exits,
exits, right? They're all
all
acceptable.
exits. So, we rebranded as Exit Factor in 2021 and added those exit paths. But really, the
Love that.
goal was working with business owners on the fundamentals of their business, right? Like what I've found is a lot of business owners are really good at what they do, they're really good at their industry, but they're not great at fundamentally running a good business model and a good business practice. So,
Mhm. So now let's now dig in on your newest venture, the
mhm,
Exit Factory, which is a franchise opportunity.
correct.
I mean, let's define the problem, which I think you kind of did already. The problem
Mhm,
is most businesses for sale won't sell. So let's
right.
just use the 80% number. 80% of
Yep,
businesses for sale will never sell.
yep,
And unfortunately, that doesn't mean they gave the business to their children or grandchildren. Many cases, the largest percentage of that 80 are literally going to liquidate and just do an asset sale or just close and put
yeah.
stuff in a storage unit like every other American, or just
Yeah,
more
yes.
crap in a storage unit. It's like, what's
Yep,
that? Oh, those are the old yogurt machines we used to have. What's
yes.
that? It's those are the vending machines that we no longer have in the marketplace, right? Yeah, like, you hear
Yep,
this every single day, all this stuff.
yes.
So we define the problem.
Yep,
How exactly, if you could get a little granular just to
yep,
for the audience, how exactly are you telling the seller who again says to you, I'm not ready to sell?
yep,
What I'm hearing from you is that's fine.
yeah.
Why don't we work together now to build a plan with the end in mind? Why don't we increase your profits? Why don't we boost your valuation? Why don't we help you orchestrate that exit? This may take 5 years. How exactly are you helping a small business owner increase profits?
Yeah. And it's a great point too. This process does take time. So what we've found is the number one reason business owners can't profitably exit is because they don't give themselves enough time, right? They hit burnout, they just show up one day and they're like, I'm done. And this entire process, if done well, to maximize the chances of your exit, maximize the value, it takes about 5 to 7 years,
Oh,
right?
it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the reason for that is because when you look at the value of a company, and we have to define the value of a company no matter what type of exit you're going to do. Like if you're going to sell, obviously a buyer is going to do due diligence on the business. If you're going to pass it on to your kids or your employees, there is usually some type of monetary exchange where a bank comes in and they finance that piece. So a bank's going to do a valuation, right? So we need to understand that valuation component, but valuations are an average of the last 3 to 5 years of the business history. It's not on
Okay.
just one great year. So if you think about it, we need to start 5 to 7 years in advance because we have to have a solid business model where we're maximizing profits and maximizing value ahead of that 3 to 5 year period where the bank's going to average our financials, right? Um,
Okay.
so that's in simplistic terms. So the first thing that we do with business owners is we do start with that goal setting and that timeline, right? We need to know what we're working with, like what type of time period are we working with, what type of exit are we working with, because there's different things you'll do for different types of exits. The second thing that we do is the profitability. So almost all business valuations, 99.9% of them are going to be based on the bottom line as a multiple of earnings, a multiple of EBITDA or seller's discretionary earnings. It's basically a function of the profitability of the company, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of business owners have focused more on revenue while they're growing and less on profit. And sometimes even they're stuffing a bunch of personal expenses or gray expenses in there to reduce their profitability so they don't have to pay a big tax bill at the end of the year, right?
Right.
So there's a form of cleanup that we have to do on the financial records. We also do some comparison reporting for our clients of saying, okay, in your industry, the average company at your size, the net profit's 8%, you're at 4. We've got a 4% or 4 point delta just to make up to average, right? But most of
Okay.
our clients, we want to go beyond average or above average. So helping them fix that financial, that business model I was talking about. Are we charging enough? Are we not spending as much as we need, as we should be, right? And then
Hmm.
making sure that we're increasing that net. So those are the two first phases that we work on with clients is what are our goals, what are our expectations, what's our timeline of this process, and then let's attack the financials because the financials is about 50% of the story of when
Okay.
we're going to exit. So
Okay. All right. I
yeah,
like that. And that's
yeah,
how you're, so by increasing their profits and helping them in somehow market a competitive analysis, like you said, pricing. I'm amazed at how many people are afraid. They're literally afraid
mhm,
to raise their prices, even though they've been squeezed with inflation for the last five, not to
yeah,
mention just normal cost of living increases over the years. They're just afraid to do it. It's just crazy to
yeah,
me how many people are just ill advised. And
yeah,
being in this business for as long as I've been in it, I am amazed at the lack of financial acumen that a lot of people have. They don't understand their P&L. They don't understand their balance sheet. They don't do really good record keeping when it comes to accounting. They really
yeah,
don't know their cost of goods. They don't know their labor number. They don't understand the average length of stay for a customer. They don't understand how to get that customer to frequent their business more often. It's like, man, there's so many opportunities out there for small business people to help them. You know, when I first
for
learned
sure.
about this brand, I've
Mhm,
been doing this 25 years, right? Being in
yep,
business and franchising and whatnot. I'm like, I liked what you did, but I'm going to be candid.
yeah,
Just hear me out. So
yeah,
I go, I like it, but I don't. And let me tell you
mhm,
why I don't like it. I
yeah,
don't like it because 80% of businesses never sell. So
yeah,
how are you making money? But then as I researched it, right? Because I've learned 25 years ago, do not make judgment calls, dig in, learn about the brand before I open up my mouth.
yeah,
Then I learned no, they're working with as many businesses as possible, regardless of the exit. You're
mhm,
working with people to help them exit. And I'm like, okay, I went from I really don't like it because of that
yeah,
one data metric we mentioned,
yep,
nobody
yep,
really sells,
yep.
to find out that you're actually helping people and you're able to monetize the exit factory regardless of the exit of the client. And stop me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
It is, yeah. So 80% of the business owners that want to exit don't, right? But 70, I think it's the stat right now, 73% of all business owners in America plan to exit their businesses in the next 10 years, right? So they're
Right.
all going to try. And like if you think about it, like my joke is always like, we're not getting out of this thing alive, right? So we're either going to exit by walking out the door or going feet first, right?
Right.
Until Elon Musk describes or discovers eternal life. Like it's not happening.
Right.
So they're all trying to exit. And actually, I think 84% of that 73% say exit planning is their top priority in their business. But they're either not actually preparing, like they might have a plan, but they're not preparing, they're not doing anything,
Hmm.
or they're doing it the wrong way. So then they're not getting the result. Right.
I want to get into that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. First, let's level set. Who's the actual customer? I mean, are these 30 million, 5 million? No, our average client is doing 750 a year in revenue. What are the averages here?
Yeah, our average client's just over a million. Our target
Nice.
market is between 500,000 and 20 million in annual revenue. Although I have a client, love her to death, she's 79 years old. She does 220,000 in revenue, right?
Okay.
And then I have a client, two younger gentlemen, they're worth more than $30 million. So that's kind of the range. And once you get above, like I'd say 50 to 100 million, there's people that come in full time as an
Right.
M&A department and they do this for companies full time. So just like we've seen like fractional CFOs or fractional CMOs or almost like doing that same business model but just
Okay.
specifically for exit planning and M&A prep for the small to mid-sized companies.
Folks, what Jessica's describing is we say these words and people don't understand the gravity of silver tsunami, right? So you're starting to see this movement. You
Yep.
refer to it as the seller tsunami, right?
Correct.
Which
Yep.
which which is still the silver tsunami because
Same
they're
thing.
baby boomers, right?
Yep.
Most
Yep.
of these sellers are baby boomers.
Yep.
They have calculated that this opportunity of this silver or seller tsunami is over $15 trillion if you add up the value of these assets that are going to be in play, these businesses and the underlying assets of these businesses. This
Yep.
is crazy math. Like
Yeah.
if you think about the business you just entered, entrepreneurship through acquisition, which a lot of people prefer, right?
Mhm.
They would rather
Yep.
say, hey, would you like to buy a startup? I deal with this every day, multiple times a
Yeah.
day. Do
Yep.
you have the intestinal fortitude to start a business from the ground up? No. Great. I
No.
appreciate your honesty. So
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
prefer a resale opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I prefer a resale. I just feel more comfortable. My spouse is more comfortable knowing that I just showed him or her a P&L. It says, look, I replaced my income if I buy this resale. I get it.
Right.
I
Yeah.
get it. But you know what? I've learned over the years, a lot of those businesses, that P&L is not accurate. The
Mhm.
franchise, the seller doesn't know math. They don't know the P&L, but
Yeah.
yet you're believing their numbers. So there's a whole lot to unpack with these resales, and I'm sure you can, for us about tightening up those P&Ls, adding back like this Lamborghini, is this part of the business? No, that's something that we just, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
do you really have an 8-year-old on payroll? No, that's my niece. We're just trying to, inflate
Yeah.
our expenses. So you
Yeah.
actually clean all that up, add all that back, get a real EBITDA number. And what are you seeing in the marketplace relative to a multiple of EBITDA? Let's say the business is netting 200.
Yeah.
What are you seeing on a business netting 200 for EBITDA versus a business, let's say, netting 500?
So it's hard because the EBITDA ranges vary drastically by industry. But if you look at all businesses under, say, $30 million in valuation, the average EBITDA multiplier is 3.5, right?
Okay,
But I
excellent.
was just working on a case that healthcare industry, right? And they're about 320,000 EBITDA, right? The range of multiples for that industry was 1.8 to 18.2 times,
Oh,
right?
wow. Yeah, right.
And so there's this, I always talk about, there's this quantitative piece, like the EBITDA and the dollars that flow to the bottom line. But then there's this qualitative piece, and that's something we also help people with, because it's one thing to get the P&Ls right and the financials right, but then we got to look at the operations of the company, because that's
Mhm.
what's the difference between a 1.8 multiplier and 18 times multiplier is, you know, do they have a great leadership team? Is the owner like out of a lot of the day-to-day business
Mhm.
operations or the front-facing business operations? What's their business model look like? Do they have recurring revenue or contracted revenue? Things like that. What's their marketing campaign? How much are they capturing the market? Do they have additional growth opportunities? That's all this stuff. And we've got like 75 points that we run through with each business owner. But that's the points that are going to make some business worth 2 times and some business worth 8 times. Right.
Mhm.
And it's all those operational, that qualitative stuff that's going to move the needle.
Let's talk about why they don't sell. Like one of the
Mm,
comments you made was overvaluation or
yes.
owner dependency, which I see all the time.
Yep.
Everyone tells me they're an entrepreneur. Everyone likes to tell me they're a business owner. And then I visit them and they're making sandwiches and they're putting hangers on dry cleaning. And I'm like,
Yep.
you are not a business owner. You are not an entrepreneur. You are an employee doing a $10 an hour job making sandwiches.
Yep.
So owner dependency drives me insane. And in franchising, I used to call out my franchisees and be like, I cannot believe you're making a boba tea. I can't believe you're making a sandwich. I can't believe you're holding a wand, extracting water from a basement. I can't believe you're doing this.
Yes.
Drives me insane, actually. It
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, look, I think it's okay to go into business ownership as a job if that's what you want, right? If that's
Yes.
the outcome that you want. And we see even like with some of our franchisees with Exit Factor, they want to be a consultant, they want to be hands-on. That's totally fine. But I think what you're saying, and I totally agree with this, is like there's a different mindset and a different role of truly becoming an owner, right? Where
Mhm.
you look at your business more as a financial asset and as an investment, right? And that's when you become the owner of it. And that's when you start focusing on the model, the people. How does this model, this widget, make me a return as an owner, right?
Mhm.
Not how much money am I making from the day-to-day operations doing the job, right? And that
Absolutely.
does get in the way of selling the companies. There are ways where you can sell a job, right? And we've seen, I'm sure you've seen plenty of them, right?
Mhm.
But you're not going to get a high valuation. You're looking at like maybe a 1, 2 times multiple max, right? In those scenarios,
Yeah.
it's not a huge wealth building event. And honestly, it's way harder to do because you're now looking for a needle in the haystack, where you're looking for someone who wants to do the exact same job that you did, right? So,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Agreed. And I appreciate the clarification. And you're absolutely right. I'm not insulting the person that says, I made 100 grand. I'm in
Mhm.
corporate America and I commute an hour each way. I just
Yep.
want to replace my income and buy my next job. I'm
Yep.
fine with that. If that's the investment objective, then you
Yep.
nailed it. You
Yep.
did exactly what you set out to do. What bothers me is I'm the business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, and it's like, and they're not happy, and they complain that they can't find help, and they complain that they can't train people, and they do all this complaining, but yet they're making sandwiches and doing all the things I described. But I agree
Yep.
with you. There's a place for everyone. That's the
Yep.
beauty of franchising. If you want to
Yep.
replace your income and have no employees, great. You want to buy an exit factory and you want to be interfacing with the client, wonderful. I,
Yep.
almost prefer it because you're the
Yeah.
highest level of business acumen engaging with the seller. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's go through some of the reasons. Here's what I want to debunk. Okay.
Yep.
I believe we have a seller problem, and I want to go through and let me say it differently. If everyone selling businesses worked with the exit factory, do you
Mhm.
truly believe you'd still have an 80-20 rule?
Oh, no. I mean,
Of course.
yeah,
Right.
our success rate is not 100%, but it's pretty close to it, right? So, in terms of the businesses that are able to exit
That's
once
my
they get
point.
through the
We
exit
don't
factor
have a
program.
buyer problem. We have a
No.
seller problem.
Mhm.
Right. So let's go through like why are these 80% people, why are they not selling? The number one thing that will come to mind is, excuse me, you want how much for that? Yeah, we want
Yeah.
1 million. You're
Yeah.
you're netting like 100 grand and you're dog grooming.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get 1 million out of that? Right. Well, that's
Yeah.
what my husband and I put into it. Therefore, that's what we want to get out of it. So, in your words, because you know way more about this than I do, why are businesses not selling?
Yeah. So I think there's 5 main issues, right? The first is, and you nailed it, is expectations. So it's just like if you owned a home, right? And I'll equate this to Southeast Florida, right? So if you own a home on Palm Beach Island, right, and you have 2,000 square feet on the water, you have a certain price that house is worth, right? Now, if you moved inland to West Palm Beach and you wanted that same price per square foot for that same 2,000 square foot house, you're not going to get it, right? And that's the same thing with businesses. Like there is a market that determines the valuation of the companies. We don't get to just make up what we need out of it. It's kind of like you hear the real estate joke of, well, I put $100,000 into the kitchen. I need to get $100,000 back. That's not how it works, right? And so there's a misalignment of the expectations of a business owner versus what the market's telling him. And that's one of the things we're trying to do at the exit factor is kind of like demystify that because there's a lot of bad information out there because there's not a lot of information, right? So people will just hear their colleagues say, well, I sold my retail store for 8 times earnings. Well, that retail store might had recurring revenue, membership model, whatever. It's not your typical retail store. And then the owner gets that number stuck in their head, right? Or more often we hear, well, I want $1 million because I need $1 million. I need $1 million to retire. Well, what we need is not exactly what our assets are worth all the time. So that's the first issue is the expectations. The second is the financial cleanliness of the businesses. And we talked about that, but I'd say probably half of all deals die because of the state of business owners' financials, right? And it's because it doesn't matter if we convince a business broker or even a buyer that our company is worth what we want it to be worth. Someone has to finance that deal, whether it's a bank, a non-bank lender, we call the rich uncle. And usually those people are very financially savvy, right? And they're going to do a full due diligence on the finances of the company. If they don't align, the money doesn't come and nobody can buy that company, right? Um, the third main issue is the owner dependency. And it's not just about the owner dependency. Like I find that buyers have two big fears. The first is that when they take over a business, the customers will go away because the customers are doing business with the owner and not the company. And the second big main fear is that when they take over the company, the employees will go away because the employees are working for the owner, not for the company. Right. And so if we can't answer those two big fears for the new owner, the buyer, they're going to be very hesitant to take that step. Right. The fourth reason is that there's a lot of times that sometimes this is just like miscommunication or misalignment on a business owner's part is no one think about it. And you never buy an asset hoping it always stays the same. You always want it to grow, right? You're not going to buy a business and hope it stays stagnant. You want there to be growth opportunity without you having to go back and invest a ton of money in it, right? And so a lot of business owners, and this is kind of is related to the fifth one, but they get burnt out of their business. And so when they're going through this exit process, a new owner will say, hey, Jess, how do I grow this company? Be like, I have no idea. I've tried everything. I can't grow it. I've tried every opportunity. The market's completely tapped. Right. Well, no one's going to want that company. And the truth is, there's probably 5,000 different ways to grow that company that I haven't tried or thought of. But I'm so done and I'm so burnt out that I can't see that right now. Right. Which is related to the last one, which we talked about this is timing. Is we just like we wait too long as business owners. So on average, if we're talking about selling a company, it takes 9 to 10 months on average to sell a company. That's if the expectations are aligned, the finances are in good order, everything's in good shape. It still takes 9 to 10 months, right? And even to do some of these other things like transition to family, transition to employees, I say give yourself a year, right? And I think most people don't do this preparation in advance. They wait until the burnout hits. They wait until the illness hits or the life crisis hits. And then it's a fire sale, right? And the only thing you can do in a fire sale is drop the price to pennies on the dollar and hope you find somebody,
That's right.
right? So
That's
so I hope
right.
that wasn't too long-winded, but those are the
Not
5
no,
key
not at
reasons I
all.
see. So,
Not at all. That is very insightful. That's very helpful to the audience to understand. Okay. So what I heard today is like 5 to 7 years to prepare a company for sale. Then you have another nine. Then once you list it, it could take
mhm.
9, 10 plus months to
Yeah.
actually close.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is, if you have a really good company, right, and it's in all this good shape, it could take 9 to 10 months. Most of our clients, when they get through Exit Factory, take them to market, they're getting offers in the first 30 days. One of our clients got like 6 offers the first week, right? So you mentioned there's not a buyer problem. On average, when you put a business listing out for sale, you're going to get 100 or 200 inquiries on that business, right? There's actually, I'd say it's probably about 100 to 1 buyers to sellers, right? The problem is businesses that are in a decent shape to transition. That's what we're lacking, right? And that's what buyers are searching for. So,
It's crazy to me that your life's work, you have an 80% chance of not exiting your life's work. That I mean, this statistic is it's like bothering me, right? 80 can it because we're entrepreneurs and we want to know you buy something, you grow it, you sell it. And it's like, no, because you didn't want to follow the blueprint, you didn't want to follow the exit roadmap, you didn't want to align yourself with an exit factory, you didn't want to, clean up your books, or you didn't want to fight a little bit harder for more customers or better retention or better customer service. You got lazy, you took your eye off the ball, and your revenues are flat
yeah.
versus showing constant year over year improvement, even if it is 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
It's a constant upward improvement. You're showing an opportunity. You said something that has cost me probably over a lifetime, $1 million+ minimum, which is the seller telling the buyer, I have done everything you can do to grow this thing in my market.
Hmm.
They actually believe that this is a worthy statement to make.
Yeah.
Most people who sell their business don't understand that you need to check the ego at the door. You need to
Yes.
have humility. You
Yep.
need to express to the buyer, I am not doing what is necessary to grow this thing. If you and your wife, or you and your
Yep.
team took over, sky's the limit. They can't
Yeah.
do it.
Well, and if you think about these exit rooms, right? There's already enough ego in the room, right? You've
Right.
got attorneys, you've got accountants on both sides, right? You've got buyers also have huge egos, right?
Yeah.
So as the business owner, and it takes emotional intelligence. It does take a lot of psychological awareness too to step back. And I think that's too why when we're working with people, it's like, let's start to view our business as this financial asset, because when you remove the emotional attachment, sometimes the ego goes with it, right? Not
I
always, but
agree.
sometimes.
Right.
But
Right.
I think that's the emotional mature thing, is that if the business owner can enter the room and say, I gave this business my all, but I've taken it as far as I can go. I'm sure there's a million other ways you can grow this business. It's just not in my wheelhouse, right? But
It's
you,
so
Mr.
true.
Buyer, you've got a great marketing skill set. I don't know anything about online. You've got this great digital background. I'm sure you can totally blow the roof off of it, right? That's a same business, totally different story, and much different outcome walking out of that room.
This is very cool. Let's get involved now in this franchise opportunity.
Yep.
I want to talk about, we have not discussed revenue streams. I
Yep.
understand services. I'm crystal clear on what you're
Yep.
doing. How
Yep.
are you making money doing this?
Yeah. So we have three different revenue streams with Exit Factor. So the first is we do what's called an exit assessment. So it's similar to, almost call it like kind of a business valuation plus a strategic plan. So we look at what the company is worth today, and then we look at how do we reach our goal. So if it's worth 1 million today and we want to sell for 3 million, we basically create a roadmap for the business owners of what the metrics need to be: revenue, gross profit, margins, all of that stuff, and then the qualitative issues that need to be resolved to get there. And that also gives us a timeline. So we charge a one-time fee for that exit assessment. And then from that exit assessment, the business owner can make one of three decisions. They can choose to sit on it, right, and do nothing with it. It's not a good decision, but it is a decision. Some people come back and have that done on an annual basis. The second option is they could choose to sell that business or exit at that current price, which, if that's the case, then we have referral relationships with business brokers, people that do ESOPs, which are employee stock ownership plans. We have referral relationships with banks, and we will get compensated a referral fee on that introduction, right? So that's the second revenue stream. And then the third revenue stream is our consulting packages. So if the business owner says, this is great, but I need help implementing this, now we can work with them from anything from a DIY online curriculum model all the way up to holding their hand, and having biweekly meetings to work through all the checklist items that we need to get done to prep it for sale or prep it for exit. And that's the third revenue stream is we do annual flat fee consulting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can share on earnings that you're comfortable sharing on the call?
I think it's a really good profit margin business, very high profit margin business. And the I think what the impressive part is it's building, right? So I've almost built this entire business model to stack revenue, right? So we'll walk through like a case study, right? We'll do that. So we have a business that I'm personally working with. I still carry one or two clients at any given time because I want to still keep my hands in the consulting and make sure it's working, right? So business came to us. They wanted to do an exit assessment. So we charged them $5,000 to do that, right? That's a one-time fee. They decided that, they're still pretty far away. So they're going to do our quarterly consulting with us. So we did that for about a year. It's about a $12,000 engagement. Second year, they said, you know what? This is just not enough, right? So they upgraded to our highest level, which is $30,000 a year, right? And now we're in year three and we're starting to get offers on the company, in the eight figures range. So $10 million plus for this company. And they're connected to one of our M&A advisory partners. So while we're not doing that transaction, we're not business brokers, we are going to get a share of that fee. So it's a stacking or a build model where you're working with a business owner, typically over at the low end 1 year, but more likely a 3 to 5 year horizon, and you're earning multiple different revenue streams along the way. So,
Okay. All right. I
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Who's the franchisee? There has to be a degree of business acumen to advise these companies. Is that hard to find? Explain that person.
Yeah, so there's three different avatars that I'd say we see most often. I don't want to say if someone's listening, like, and is really passionate about this, if I don't fit one of these three avatars, I can't do it because we do have a training system. But most of our franchisees come in one of these three areas. So one, they've built, grown, and sold their own companies, right? So they've done it themselves. They figured this is hard. It's really hard to do on my own, and I'm passionate about going back and helping other people do that. So that's a contingent of our franchisees. Second contingent of our franchisees, I mentioned that there are people who do this at a much higher level for larger companies. That's our second contingent of franchisees. We've had some come from like the big four consulting firms where they're doing basically M&A prep work for large corporate companies, Fortune 500s, things like that. They get burnt out of the grind. Those consultants, those poor people are on a plane like literally every day, right? And have no control over their lives and schedule. They're like, I want to do something like this, but I want to be in my local community. So that's our second contingent. And the third is they've been floating around the exit strategy and exit planning world in different functional areas. So we have people that have done business brokerage before, M&A advisory, fractional CFO work. We have a lot of CPAs, and they've said, I just feel more passionate about helping someone and coaching them rather than just crunching numbers on a piece of paper. So if you look at most of our franchise network and even our consultants, a lot of them fit into those 3 buckets. So,
Okay, got it. All right,
yeah.
excellent. The investment's pretty low. I mean, this is like a bolt-on for a CPA. He could just operate this out of his office,
Yeah.
right?
So
What
yeah.
what are you seeing investment range-wise?
So our current franchise fee is $39,500. And then we do have a Schedule A or a startup marketing package that's $15,000, 14,995. So that's the initial upfront investment plus some taxes and fees in certain states, things like that.
Wow, and then operating capital. You want obviously you want someone to have some. So give me that range. Like what did I see in IFPG? I thought it was
I think
like
it's
under
50,
yeah, it was
55.
yeah, to 80,
Yeah, to 80. We
82.
do, we recommend, and I think this is good for all franchises, right? We recommend having obviously some working capital coming into the business, some money set aside for marketing activities, right? But most of our franchisees, if we look at the other thing they like, is the overhead and the flexibility of it. So most of our franchisees operate out of a virtual office or
Mhm.
co-working, right? So there's no office overhead. The employee model is to scale the company, you hire more consultants to work with the clients themselves. So again, if we're talking about how to, as exit factor owners, how do we get out of the business? We scale by hiring consultants to do the work. Those consultants are 1099
Mhm.
contractors, and they're paid on either a revenue share or commission model. So there's not a payroll overhead. So that's what keeps the initial investment really low. Is we're not building out any space, right?
That's right.
And then we don't have any W-2 salaries we're starting off with.
Right. I mean, even in non-brick and mortar brands, you have to get the van. The van is outfitted. You need some equipment, right? You're
Yep.
still up to 150, 200 for some of these non-brick and mortar brands. You're really sub 100. You're 50 to 60,000 cash out of pocket.
Yeah.
Total
Yeah.
investment on the high side, 80, 82. That's really affordable. And that sounds like you're comfortable with someone saying, I'm going to bolt this on to my practice. I'm already a business broker. I want to
Mhm.
start offering these services. I'm already a CPA or an LLM tax attorney or something. You're cool with that.
Yeah, we have a number of franchisees that have other businesses. Most of them
Yeah.
have assigned someone in their office or hired somebody to specifically be the exit factor consultant, right? So they're not just adding a job title to somebody.
Right.
But we have people that are involved in business brokerage and M&A. We have people that are involved in tax, like you said. We have a franchisee that's involved in real estate, and so there's synergies that we've seen. We're working with a couple of franchisees that have identified other synergies too with their industries, but it can be run solo or as a bolt-on to existing business practices.
You mentioned a lifestyle statement and made me think of hours of operation. Are you 5 days a week?
Ultimately, that's the business owners as the franchisees a decision. We recommend a typical business schedule Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Ultimately, like we have two key activities that we're doing as franchise owners and also as our consultants. They mimic a lot. We're either doing business development and marketing, which obviously is on your own schedule, right? You decide when you're going to do those marketing activities, if you're going to go to networking events. And then your consulting sessions, we see about 50-50 of our clients wanting to be in person versus virtual like this. And so that gives us a lot of flexibility too. When we're designing those consulting sessions, obviously it's around our schedule and the client schedule. And yeah, a lot of our clients do want to be virtual now, which gives another level of flexibility as well. So,
That's excellent.
yeah.
Is there a tech stack? Is that necessary or anything proprietary with the brand?
Yeah, so the technology is really what powers the brand and what keeps everything really slim. So we do have a franchise management system to like manage their business. We have three primary technology tools. We have a franchise management system that manages their business for the franchisee, right?
Okay.
Then we have an exit planning software. So one of the questions we get asked all the time is like, do I have to be a business valuation expert? And no, we have a software for that. And that also goes into our planning phase. So once we do the exit assessment, we can also create that roadmap and a whole project plan specifically for that client. And then the third tech stack is the client interfacing tool. So one of the things I mentioned and something I'm passionate about is there's so many small businesses in America, right? I think it's like 97% of
That's right.
businesses are under $1 million. And, for some of those businesses, a consulting fee with us would even be out of reach. And I don't want those businesses to go out of business either. So we do have a DIY or a do-it-yourself online curriculum that our franchisees can offer for a lower price point for those businesses. And that's that third piece is we have a full online curriculum and client interface system for those clients.
That's excellent. You
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
You almost can't be a franchisor today without having it all. And
Yeah.
everyone wants to know, what is the business worth? There has to be some methodology, consistent
Hmm.
methodology to determine,
Yep.
a valuation. Is it a tech company? Is it pet care? Is it home care? Is it brick and mortar? Are we manufacturing? What are we doing?
Right.
You're right. It matters. It's not just, well, what are you netting? Just multiply it by 2.5 or 3.2. Doesn't
Yeah.
work like that. Yeah. It
No.
depends largely on the industry, everything like that.
Yeah.
You
I
are
always
an
say this.
author? Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say, business valuation is always part art, part science. There is a science to it. There is a formula, right? But there's an art form of like how you get to that formula, and that's kind of that second tech piece is what helps resolve that. Because when you get into the art part of it, there's a lot of leeway there, and we want to guide our franchisees and consultants to make the right decision for that business.
That's great. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw that you wrote a book, and I think you're working on your second book or
Yeah.
another book.
Second book, it's the first draft is due to the publisher on Friday, so wish me luck on that. I'm pretty close.
Good for
But
you. Well,
yeah,
you're no stranger to it. You've done it before. You know what you're
I
involved in. Right.
This one was a bit harder. So the first one was called Getting the Most for Selling Your Business. And it was really about that end phase. When you're going to list the business, what are the few things that you can do when you put the business on the market to improve the likelihood you're going to sell? Right. This book, it is called Exit Factor, is kind of taking this entire methodology and putting it into book form as an
Okay.
entry level tool for prospective clients or clients. And so I think because I'm more passionate about it and there's a lot more to put into it, it's been a little bit of a harder lift for me, but we're there and I feel
That's
really
great.
good about it. So
That's great. Best of luck with it. I'm sure it'll be a
thanks.
hit
Thanks.
and so timely. I
Yeah.
mean, that's so timely with this whole conversation. You
Yeah.
also have a podcast. You want to plug that for folks
Yeah.
that may want to
Actually,
listen in?
so yeah, we've been doing Andy Cagnetta and I have been doing the Deal Board podcast for coming up on 7 years now. We're coming up on our 200th episode. Is
Wow.
going to be released in June. I'm actually flying down to West Palm next week to record that. And then that will be my sunset for it. So Andy and the Transworld Network is going to be taking it from there. We do have plans for some other podcasts in the works, but the Deal Board's been great and the Transworld Networks really supported it. And so now we've got brokers and advisors contributing to the podcast all over the country. So
That's great.
we just started searching for our first international partners too. So it was just a show in London. We're looking for a UK master partner. Same thing with Canada. We're primarily targeting English speaking countries first, but UK, Canada, Ireland, Australia. So that's my back half of the year. That's where my focus is going. So because the one thing I saw when I was, and I know this because I'm in a few global entrepreneurship organizations, but when I was in the UK, it was reaffirmed everyone I met with, the problems we talked about in the US, same in the UK, same in Dubai, same in Canada. And so this is really like a global issue. And it affects global economies too. So I feel like we're just touching the tip of the iceberg and in terms of fixing this 80% problem. And like we talked about, I don't necessarily know that if, when Exit Factor blows up and this whole industry blows up and is a big thing, is it going to change it and be flipped? And only 20% of businesses don't sell or don't exit. I don't
Right.
necessarily think that's going to be the case,
Right.
but the impact, if we move from 80% even down to 60%, that's a huge impact, right?
I,
And a huge
yes.
difference.
We're talking
So
about millions of businesses.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
at any given moment in time, I think that because you just said there's like 35 million small businesses.
yeah,
At any moment in time, there could be 15, 20% on the market for sale. Like
yeah,
just take a snapshot in time. So yeah, if you can move that needle, it's huge. Right. I don't expect you to flip the script from, a 2080,
no,
but 80% is a total failure. And what gets measured gets done. What
yep,
becomes important to people, right? That's what will get resolved.
yeah.
You're shining a big bright light on this, and your timing of doing it is huge because boomers are, look at all these HVAC people. They can't find buyers. There's no one wanting to buy. These businesses are insanely profitable.
Yeah.
No one can live without air conditioning and heating. I mean, like, you just can't
Especially not
do
in
it.
Florida and Texas, right?
That's right. All right. Exactly. Well, you're in Texas now, right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm still in Florida, as you know, and I don't care fiscal stimulus. I don't care who's in the White House. I don't care your party affiliation. If your AC goes out in Florida, I don't care if you're unemployed. You will find a way to fix that thing.
Yeah.
There are certain businesses in the trades that really should never close. There should always be a buyer, a succession plan in play to take that business over. I just think it's a tragedy to
Yeah.
close these businesses that are essential services.
Yes,
Anyway,
I agree.
yeah, I mean, they need to hire folks like you and get this figured out if they really want an exit. I can't thank you enough. I learned so much. I think the
Thank
brand
you.
is very cool. I love the investment. I
Mhm.
love the lifestyle. I love what it does. I love the problem that it solves, right? I mean, it's so quantifiable what you're doing. Hey, I can't sell my business. We could teach you how to do it. I just think it's
Yep.
great.
Yeah. Well,
You
thank you
have a
so
phenomenal
much.
background. I thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on the show.
You got it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on more great content. And if you're considering investing in a franchise, whether it's the brand you featured today or another opportunity, we're here to help. Visit us at Phrenosity.com. That's FRANOCITY.com. We love to help you take that next step towards business ownership.